Hey, this is Swoopy, and you're listening to Skepticality on Christmas Day, December 25th, 2012.
Skepticality.
So why are you doing a show for Christmas?
Because I'm insane.
Well, I mean, it's cool and everything, so what is it about?
This is are you feeling feisty?
No.
Why not?
It doesn't matter. You asked me a question, I answered it. So what does that have to do with what you're doing?
I was just saying, this episode's going to be about words.
Oh, is this the word guy?
Yeah.
Is this that etymology book?
Yes.
Oh, I wanted to talk to that guy.
I did it already.
Oh, well, Merry Christmas to you.
This is Bob Carroll. Welcome to another episode of Unnatural Virtue. Today's topic is self-help. Only 35% of small businesses survive for 5 years in the United States, yet entrepreneurs rate the chances of success of any business at 60%, and the chances of success for their own enterprise at 81%. 1/3 of entrepreneurs think their chance of failing is 0. That is why I predict a sellout for Success 2013, billed as the world's #1 business seminar, and coming soon to an arena near you if you live in Sacramento, Sydney or Perth, Australia, Kuala Lumpur, or Singapore. I live near Sleep Train Arena in Sacramento, but even though admission is only $4.95 if I register early, I'm really not interested in what these folks have to tell me about how I can learn to lead, achieve, and succeed. Sleep Train Arena was formerly known as Power Balance Arena, named after a rubber band with a hologram that is supposed to have magical properties. One of the Success 2013 speakers is former Notre Dame and San Francisco 49er great Joe Montana. Other speakers include entertainers Bill Cosby and Larry King. The token female speaker is Kendra Todd, billed as the first woman to win The Apprentice with Donald Trump, and the consummate role model for professional women. Sounds swell. So do Rick Belluzzo, who we're told produced staggering profits while at Microsoft, and Brian Tracy, who will reveal the secrets to maximizing your sales potential. The other speakers offer equally tantalizing secrets guaranteed to make sure you are not one of the 65% who will fail in business. These business success seminars set themselves apart from the larger self-help movement by being conducted by people who have actually achieved a high degree of success by some standard apparently important to business people. I personally find Donald Trump to be one of the least appealing human beings on the planet, but many people hold him up as a role model for the successful businessman. Anyway, I'd say the odds are slim that these successful people have much of value to tell those attending the seminar. They'll provide optimism and cheerleading, sure, but I doubt if they'll provide many insights into how to succeed in business. Even those who have succeeded in business, rather than sports or entertainment, may have little of value to tell the audience about how to succeed in business. Their success stories are probably inflated, giving more credit than they should to their brilliant strategies and less credit than they should to luck. The situations they found themselves in are unlikely to be similar to the situations of those in the audience. I talked about this problem of selling success by the success gurus in Skepticality episode number 187 on the illusion of understanding. Still, it'll be a feel-good affair, and what do you have to lose for $4.95? My guess is that the real money is going to be made by selling products like DVDs and books and what they call diamond seating that allows you to have breakfast and lunch with the speakers. I'll bet that's an intimate affair. These business success seminars are put on by an outfit with the swell name of Success Resources. This outfit also promotes non-business seminars featuring people like Tony Robbins. Robbins is probably the best known of the self-help gurus who are not known for their business success outside of the motivational business. Many of these self-help gurus have never achieved success at anything except at running self-help meetings. Steve Salerno, who has written extensively about self-help programs, describes them this way. Self-help is an enterprise wherein people holding the thinnest of credentials diagnose in basically normal people symptoms of inflated or invented maladies, so that they may then implement remedies that have never been shown to work. Self-help seminars bill themselves as personal development training programs. Dozens to hundreds of people are given several hours to several days of intense instruction aimed at helping them begin to discover what is hindering them from achieving their full potential and living more satisfied lives. These self-help gurus claim to know how to help people become more creative, intelligent, healthy, and rich. They focus primarily on the role that interpersonal communication plays in self-esteem and in defining our relationships with others. Self-help gurus claim to know why their participants are not happy or why they are not living fulfilled lives. They assume everyone is being hindered by the same things and that one approach will suit all. Some self-help gurus use public television and books as their vehicles. Others give seminars in hotel ballrooms. Some use infomercials and peddle books and tapes to the masses to help them get on the path to self-realization and success. The U.S. Army might think it takes a few years to become all that you can be, but the gurus of self-help think that it can be done in a few hours or days. These gurus might all take the one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach to self-help, but the founders of such programs as EST, Landmark Forum, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, Tony Robbins Seminars, Impact Training, MJB Seminars, Silva Mind Control, Dr. DeMartini, Ryan Cady, PSI Seminars, Mind Dynamics, the daddy of them all, LifeSpring, Hoffman Quadrinity, Complete Centering, and the like, use their own unique cookie cutters. Their websites are often very slick, but one infallible sign that you are about to waste your time and money if you pursue the call of a self-help program is if the website proudly and loudly proclaims the wonders of the law of attraction. A short amount of reflection should make it apparent that the gurus of personal development training are like those infomercial stars who promise to share with you their secrets on how to make millions of dollars by taking out classified ads or by buying repossessed properties. The real money is not in taking out classified ads or buying repossessions. Otherwise, that's what the infomercial star would be doing instead of making infomercials. The real money is in selling the idea to others. If the trainers who work for Tony Robbins or Landmark Forum could realize their true potential in a meaningful, lucrative way, would they take a sales commission job? Would they work for a guru for a relatively small sum of money while investing a rather extensive amount of time in the hope of some sort of breakthrough? No. If they want to reach their own true potential, they must break away and start their own personal training program, which is exactly what many of them do, including Tony Robbins. Nevertheless, despite the lack of proof that these programs work the way their advocates claim, and despite the fact that many trainers are overly zealous in their recruitment of participants in seminars and advanced seminars, many participants feel they benefit greatly from such programs. However, research has shown that the feelings of having benefited greatly from participation in a self-help program do not correspond to beneficial changes in behavior. Also, many of those who feel they have benefited do not understand that others may not feel they benefit at all from such programs. To their healthy friends and family members, the zealot may appear to have been brainwashed. Their enthusiasm seems unnatural and disproportionate. If they were unbalanced before taking the program, they may appear to have gone beyond breakthrough into breakdown. Well, that's it for this episode of Unnatural Virtue. To find out more about the topics mentioned here, see the show notes, my website, The Skeptic's Dictionary, and my blog, Unnatural Acts That Can Improve Your Thinking. In the meantime, please commit some unnatural acts in public. And don't forget, skepticism, though unnatural, is a virtue.
I'm Heather Henderson, and this is the News and Religion. Priest abuse files may be released without church officials' names. In its landmark $660 million settlement with victims of sexual abuse 5 years ago, the Archdiocese of Los Angeles agreed to make public the confidential personnel records of all priests accused of molesting children. But the documents have been scrubbed of what many regard as the most important information, the identities of the members of the church hierarchy who reshuffled abusers. The Cardinal stepped down as Archbishop last year, and now the names have been redacted by church lawyers at the direction of a retired federal judge managing the files release. Some abuse victims are hoping the judge decides to release the full, unredacted files, saying that would be in keeping with the settlement. Lawyers for the Archdiocese recently completed redacting the documents, a process that took over a year, and are awaiting the final ruling. Archdiocese attorneys said he opposed modifying the order because church leaders were eager to wrap up the very expensive and painstaking process. People with no religious affiliation make up the third largest global group in a new study of the size of the world's faiths, placing after Christians and Muslims and just before Hindus. The study, based on extensive data for the year 2010, also showed Islam and Hinduism are the faiths most likely to expand in the future, while Jews have the weakest growth prospects. The unaffiliated category covers all those who profess no religion, from atheists and agnostics to people with spiritual beliefs but no link to any established faith. It's nice to be counted. A billboard touting unbelief, posted in time for the Christmas season, has been vandalized again. Every national free thought organization that has purchased billboards or bus advertisements in the last 5 years has reported some form of vandalism or protest. In the latest example, a billboard posted in early December in Chico, California, originally read, "Don't believe in God? Join the club." Within a week, vandals removed the word "don't." The billboard was one of 12 purchased this month by a local chapter of the United Coalition of Reason, a national organization that works to unite small, local groups of atheists and other free thinkers. Christians. I'm Heather Henderson, and this was the News and Religion. Visit my other podcasts at ardentatheist.com and skepticallyyours.net. Special thanks to my audio engineer, Emery. The News and Religion was brought to you through the scientific method.
Last week this past semester, I was teaching a class on visual argument when I touched on one of my favorite images of the Second World War. AP photographer Joe Rosenthal's photograph of Marines raising the American flag at the summit of Mount Suribachi. It's one of the most widely reprinted images of all time, and it's not hard to see why. I think it may be one of the most perfect combat photos ever taken. The image is exquisitely composed. Your eye effortlessly follows a natural line from the flag down the pole and to the men, whose task is instantly identifiable. The battle for Iwo Jima itself was late in the war, from February to March of 1945, when Japan's defeat was no longer a question. Only when and at what cost would Japan be defeated remained in doubt. Iwo was a Japanese home island, and the U.S. landing there represented the beginning of a new final chapter in the conflict. The Japanese had been preparing the island for years, digging caves and tunnels in the volcanic rock and covering every inch of the island with pre-sighted artillery and interlocking fields of machine gun fire, so that there was nowhere safe on the island for an invader. Furthermore, the tunnels allowed the Japanese troops to disappear into one hole and pop up behind the Americans and continue the fight from there. More than 70 days of preparatory aerial bombardment and 3 days of naval artillery to soften up the island didn't even scratch the defenders, a garrison of 21,000 Japanese, of whom only a few hundred would survive. Fighting there was so savage that 5 members of the 5th Marine Division were awarded medals of honor for actions there on a single day. And by the time the island was secured, 6,000 Marines had died, and another 17,000 had been wounded. Iwo Jima was a 2.5 by 4.5 mile reeking rock of calculated engineered hell. The only feature to speak of on the entire island was Mount Suribachi at the southern tip, itself riddled with man-made caves and bunkers. It loomed over the invading Americans on the beaches and must have been discouraging to know that the enemy was spotting you from the heights he commanded. Militarily and psychologically, Suribachi was clearly a primary objective. Symbolically, of course, the flag raising signified something more than the taking of a strategic position. It represented, on the eve of American victory in the Pacific, the end of a long struggle of unusual savagery that started at Pearl Harbor. 5 Marines and a Navy corpsman, their faces obscured, straining to raise the flag as it unfurled, came to represent the collective struggle of the American people on the verge of victory. Those men could have been anyone's brother, father, or husband. An excellent interpretation of this image, by the way, can be found in Vincent Casaragola's Theaters of War. Now, the sequence of events that led to the raising of the flag are fairly well known, so I'm always slightly flummoxed how every semester a student raises their hand and says, well, that picture was staged. I'd like to take the opportunity to talk about this myth and dispel the idea that this important image from American history is as fake as the Cottingley Fairies, the Patterson-Gimlin film, and last week's YouTube video of the baby-snatching eagle. When I say that people believe the photo was staged, what I mean is that people believe it was posed for propagandistic reasons. And it was used in American propaganda in the closing months of the war. The iconic scene was recreated numerous times in tableau vivant during the 7th War Bond Drive, and on screen about 5 years later in John Wayne's film Sands of Iwo Jima. If you want to see a cheesy, though at the time deeply compelling recreation that includes some of the men who are actually there, I recommend that you look at the climactic scene of Sands of Iwo Jima. Nonetheless, the frequent actual restagings of the shot, I'm sure, contributed to the notion that the image was staged. The ultimate source of the myth, surprisingly, comes from the photographer Joe Rosenthal. And to understand how he came to launch the myth, one needs to understand the conditions under which photographers were working during the war, and how Rosenthal came to take the photograph. The flag being raised in the iconic image was not the first American flag to be raised that day on Suribachi's summit. Earlier in the day, a platoon of about 40 men had made it to the top with a small flag which they had orders to raise if they reached the top. It was by no means certain they would. By 10:30 in the morning of the 23rd of February, D+3, that unit raised the flag under what can only be described as combat conditions. In fact, the officer who assembled the patrol to the top later told an interviewer, quote, "I thought I was sending them to their deaths." The first flag raising was photographed by a correspondent for Leatherneck magazine. In it, one Marine is keeping guard with his weapon at the ready, as the patrol at the summit was vulnerable to being attacked from any direction. Marines all over the island, when they saw that an American flag had been raised at the peak of Suribachi, raised a cheer, and ships offshore blasted their whistles. At that moment, Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal was offshore and decided he wanted that flag as a souvenir. And so did the battalion that raised and owned the flag, by the way. So soon, a second, larger flag was sent up with a small unit laying telephone wire to the top. The officer in command at the summit, Lieutenant Schreier, coordinated the raising of a second, larger flag with the simultaneous lowering of the smaller flag. This changing of flags was also photographed, this time by Private Bob Campbell, and both events are visible in his photo. Joe Rosenthal had not been present for the initial flag raising, but he was at the summit for the second. At the moment the second flag was actually being raised, however, he was distracted talking to cameraman Sergeant Bill Gnost, who was filming about 3 feet away from Rosenthal. But when he saw the flag being raised, he raised the camera instinctively and shot from the hip, as it were. He did not have the scene in his viewfinder, and he was not certain that he'd even taken a usable photograph, or if he had, what it looked like. The color movie camera caught the entire event from almost exactly the same angle, and we see that the scene is not being staged. A few minutes later, Rosenthal assembled some of the Marines present for a group photograph in front of the raised flag. This photo, he thought, with its dramatic view of the landing beaches in the background and the men cheering with their helmets and weapons raised, was the one he knew he got, and he thought it was likely to be published. His film was sent back to and developed on Guam, where an AP editor named John Bodkin made the decision to send back the now iconic image to New York. As the story is told in James Bradley's definitive Flags of Our Fathers, because Rosenthal was a civilian, his photos were released ahead of those of the first flag raising. Rosenthal himself never saw the photo until March 4th, when he was on Guam, when a fellow correspondent congratulated him on, quote, the flag-raising shot on Iwo, and asked, "Did you pose it?" Rosenthal assumed that he was talking about the photo he knew he had gotten, the celebratory shot that he had in fact posed, and he said sure. Only after that conversation took place did someone show him the photo that had made him an instant celebrity. He spent much of his future career trying to correct that initial misunderstanding. Rosenthal later reflected, "If I'd posed the shot, I would of course have ruined it. I would have picked fewer men, for the 6 are so crowded in the picture that one of them, Sergeant Michael Strank, only the hands are visible. But his reaction to hearing of his photo's fame and his misapprehension of which photo had been selected slipped into history and became the foundation of the alternative, unsinkable rumor that remains today.
Hello and welcome to The Odds Must Be Crazy on Skepticality, where crazy things happen to you, you send them to us, then we get to stroke our own egos by reading them back to you on an internationally famous podcast. Thank you!
I'm Wendy Hughes.
And I'm Jarrett Kaufman.
And we'll be guiding you through today's story, then poking its fun in the eye with our analysis.
But that's its own kind of fun, Wendy. Today's story to poke at is the second contributed by blog reader Joseph Gagne. You can find it on our site starting today by searching for Kindle Coincidence or by clicking on the link in the show notes. Joseph writes, I love my e-reader. Ever since I bought it last year, I have been reading voraciously. It's amazing how much more reading one gets done with a lightweight device on the bus. I've also taken a liking to downloading various fun and funny images as backgrounds when my device is turned off. Today, I happen to be reading from the book Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. In this particular chapter, Feynman recalls his jousting with censors while working on the atomic bomb. Here I was, devouring this chapter and the various ways the author foiled the censors when it was time to get off the bus. As I turned off my e-reader, there appeared one of my hundreds of background images, a black screen with big bold letters. Censored.
I think I can understand how you can fall in love with an e-reader. Isn't that another name for the tablet I bought from you? I figured out how to put seasonal wallpaper on it.
They're a little different, but the point is having a device with potentially thousands of books and something smaller than a paperback is a literary lover's dream. But as for the story itself, this one's pretty fun. Barbara Drescher gave us her thoughts on how something like this happens. Here's a hint. It's called priming.
Yep, according to Barbara, this one is not possible to quantify without knowing how many background images were available. The author said hundreds, so I guess the odds are 1 in hundreds, but that assumes that none of the other background images could be interpreted as related in any way at all. I found this one not surprising at all, but interesting. And I think I found it interesting because the author did.
But still, hundreds of possible wallpapers, but he just happened to have one that related to directly what he'd just heard?
Right, but there were unknowns that the author couldn't have included. Barbara had more to say. This is a good example of how priming works. Essentially, we are most likely to notice things in our environment that are the same as, similar to, or related to something we have recently experienced. So, the incident itself isn't all that surprising, but the fact that the author noticed it is an interesting part of our nature, I think. How many times has the author turned the e-reader off without even noticing the background image at all?
So, we notice things that are coordinated with what we've already been thinking about. I sort of understand why it's less surprising than it seems, but I think my own cognitive biases keep me too entertained by this one to let the analysis drain the fun from it.
Yep. So, what kinds of things are you usually reading, watching, or thinking about that tie into other experiences?
Oh, there are plenty, but I suspect if I went into too much depth, we might need to censor ourselves.
Thanks for listening to The Odds Must Be Crazy on Skepticality. Don't forget to visit theoddsmustbecrazy.com and tell us we were wrong about something. Then, if we weren't, we'll get to start a crazy internet argument with you. You'll dig in your heels and everyone will lose. But it'll be fun!
Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, circle us on Google+, and validate us in life. Hit the Submit a Story link on our site to share your own crazy stories, or tweet the short ones with the hashtag TOMBC.
The Odds Must Be Crazy is a project in collaboration with the Independent Investigations Group in Los Angeles, California. Visit them at iigwest.org.
Barbara Drescher is a contributing editor to our blog and can also be found at icbseverywhere.com.
Our theme music comes to us courtesy of Mr. Deity himself, Brian Keith Dalton. You can find him at mrdeity.com.
So until next time, listeners, make sure to think about everything you think about, and then think about everything you see, and then think about the thoughts you have about the things that you thought, and then think about the things that you read, and how those affect the things that you thought about the things that you thought about before.
So today I'm here with Mark Forsyth. You are the proprietor of the cool blog, the Inky Fool. Tell us a little bit about your blog.
Well, the blog I started in 2009 as a place where just every day I put up a strange story about words. So something about the English language, about a word and where it comes from. So the fact that, for example, there's a nice one, the word shag, which everybody, to have sex, which everybody thinks of as being an American term, is actually originally, I think it was Benjamin Franklin who used that first. Oh no, Thomas Jefferson, my apologies. So it's actually originally an American word, and it's these strange little peculiarities of the language, but a lot of it is about where words come from, and you know, that America's named after Amerigos Vespucci and things like that.
So Thomas Jefferson came up with the word shag?
The first recorded use of it ever is by Thomas Jefferson in a legal case.
So that means we Americans can use the word shag because, you know, therefore it's American.
Absolutely, yeah. It's American long before we got it or Austin Powers got it. First citation is on your side of the Atlantic.
Well, I guess Austin Powers would be from Canada, so...
or wherever it is.
On your blog, it's interesting because, like, today I learned why we call a commode the commode.
And the connection between that and commodity, which is what I like. I love the connections between words, how one thing relates to another. So a commode and a commodity and accommodation all come from the Latin word commodus, which means to be suitable or helpful or convenient for something. So a commode is quite convenient, and so is accommodation, and so is a commodity, which is something that helps you. So it's seeing that some connection between the words, which I kind of love.
Like a day or two before that, you told the world what the real meaning of President Obama's name means.
Yeah, well, I mean, real meaning, the etymological meaning. You've got to be careful about these things.
Well, yeah.
Barak is means blessed, and Hussein is Arabic for handsome, and Obama is the do word. I'm not sure if I'm correctly. It's that in language for crooked or crooked path. Either one. So Barack Hussein Obama means blessed, handsome, and crooked, etymologically speaking. I'm not making any political point there.
Some people would actually say, well, you're right on, from what I've seen from some press.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people can agree with it. Yeah, etymology is fun, but it doesn't necessarily... people often talk about it as the true meaning. I just find it interesting and delightful and often just very, very funny. That's the main thing I love about etymology.
You've actually come out with a couple books. Like today, I kind of have you on for your newest book, was the Etymologicon. Wow, I can't say that word.
The point is only writing books that people can't pronounce the names of, so it's the Etymologicon.
This actually came out of your blog, the Inky Fool. Is that kind of where it started?
That's where it started. I mean, the Inky Fool blog got popular, and I got a publishing deal on the basis of that. The question was how to arrange all these stories, and I decided to do it via a series of connections, how one word connects to another by a means that you would never have guessed. So, for example, Bluetooth technology. Which the guy who invented that was reading an old historical novel about the King of Denmark 1,000 years ago, who was called Harold Bluetooth, who was the first guy to unite the warring provinces of Denmark. And he reckoned that because he was doing a system which would unite warring parts of technology, like your mobile phone and your computer, he named it Bluetooth technology after Harold Bluetooth, this king of Denmark who had blue teeth 1,000 years ago. And that's kind of fun in and of itself. But then I discovered that Harold Bluetooth had his daughter-in-law was called Queen Gunhilda. And a few hundred years later, there was a large cannon in England named after her called the Queen Gunhilda. And then that got shortened to the Gunner, and then that got shortened to gun. And that's where we get the word gun from. So Bluetooth and guns are basically one little atomic family who both lived hundreds of years before the inventions that they've given their names to.
Well, fascinating. That means, you know, every time I use a Bluetooth, I'm also using something to do with war and terror.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is connected. You go far enough back.
That's just one of those really fun bits of mental gymnastics you can do every day.
Yeah, and it's great, and it's amusing. Like I say, it's not actually true, but there's another one which I discovered, the Rolling Stones, the band, the great, and I love this because they're the great countercultural icons of the '60s, And they're named, obviously, well, after the Muddy Waters song, like Rolling Stone, and then that's named from the phrase, a rolling stone gathers no moss. And that's named from the idea of a rolling stone which you use to keep your lawn flat. It's a roller stone which you, if used regularly, will gather no moss. So they're named after gardening implements.
That's kind of funny. I didn't realize where that rolling stone gathers no moss came from.
Well, exactly. Nor did I until I started researching around and found an Elizabethan dictionary which told me, I mean, this is a 16th century dictionary, which told me exactly what a rolling stone was. And you go, wow, that's fantastic.
It is, actually. So the story you had at the very beginning of the book, is that actually true?
Oh, the story about people trying to escape from me. No, that's not quite true.
I was wondering.
It's not quite true, but sometimes I can get like that. I mean, it's kind of good because writing the book was kind of good for me, because I'm the kind of guy who will pick you up over a conversation over a beer and say, hey, do you know that word you just used, where it's from? And, you know, I reckon I can probably bore people senseless like that, although I do usually try and keep it under control. So I just thought I'd put all my amusing stories down in a book.
And it's funny because you can't even help yourself in your own book. You had to even describe what the word preface came from right off the bat.
Yeah, that which is said before, or fartus. And then I start off the book with the word book, and what does a turn up for the books mean? I mean, it's a common expression meaning an unusual event. But then you start thinking, wait a minute, how do you turn up for a book? You could turn a page of a book, but you can't turn up for a book. And it turned out to be, it was a turn up for the bookmakers. It's a gambling term for when an unfancied, unbacked horse comes in. And that means the bookmakers make a lot of money, and that's what a turn up for the books is.
And then right after that, you had to, keep people interested by giving off the meaning of where we have the word testicles came from. And now I will never eat guacamole again thinking the same way.
I know. I was ashamed of that because I really like avocado, and then I find that it comes from the Aztec or Nahuatl word for testicles, because the Aztecs reckoned that it looked, well, just like a great big green testicle, and that's where avocado comes from via the Spanish. It's ahuatl, I think, in the original language. And so you're serving up, well, guacamole is mashed up testicles, which isn't that great a way of thinking about things, really.
Well, my roommate, Swoopy, she doesn't like guacamole or avocado, so now I'll give her one more reason not to be so strange for thinking that.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
And to keep on the train, to give people an idea how this works, is that you went from testicles and guacamole and such on, because then it turned into underwear, and then I learned that underwear came from a Christian martyr.
Saint Pantaleon, the All Compassionate, yeah. This is a strange story. There was an early Christian martyr who, well, he's semi-legendary. No one's quite sure if he existed or not. He was called Saint Pantaleon in about 300 AD. And he became the patron. Pantaleon means all compassionate. It's from the Greek pan and talion. So he became the patron saint of Venice. And in Venice, they dressed in what was considered then an odd way with these tight leggings. And as a result, those leggings came to be known, because Pantaleon was such a popular name in Venice, they came to be known as pantaloons. And from that, we get to pants, which is just a shortening of pantaloons, and from that you get to underpants. But underpants, that pant bit is still a shortening of Pantaleon, the all-compassionate martyr of 300 AD.
See, now I can't look at either guacamole or my underwear the same anymore.
Well, it's nice to know that your underwear is all compassionate, I think.
Well, that part I like. At least it better be, because it could do some damage if it wasn't. To bring this into a little bit of skepticism, you actually have a little section of the book that's all about the coincidence and patterns, which is a skeptical topic, and you actually bring that into language in words. I thought that was great. Yeah,
well, there are all these sort of these funny coincidences. I'm trying to remember them off the top of my head now. There's in the Chinese word for pay is pay, and then there's the Uzbek word for chop is chop, and the in the extinct Aboriginal language of Mabaram, a dog was called a dog. And there are all these funny little coincidences which would make some people say, God, these languages must be related. It must be that they were, all part of one ancient civilization. Whereas, of course, the truth is that there can just be coincidences. There can just be, there are only so many sounds you can make, and there's bound to be a language which has the same word that we have. The Nahuatl, actually, going back to that, their word for well was well. The way that you show that languages are related, and every language from English to, the Indo-European family goes from English through French, German, Latin, and then all the way over to the northern Indian languages. For example, there's another one, the Punjab in northern India. That's the land of 5 rivers, and that Pun in there is the same root from 6,000 years ago that you find in the pentagon, which has 5 sides. It's a Pun pen. Slight change in pronunciation for the number 5, just in the pen. But what you have to show is a pattern of word changes and sound changes between the languages. So, for example, the paternal Pisces, which are both Latinate words, would be fatherly fishes over in the Germanic languages, because the P's, the sound P, as it appeared in the Greek and Latin languages, always turned into an F in the Germanic languages, and English is basically still a Germanic language. So but what you have to demonstrate is example after example after example of a pattern forming and sound changes forming before you can say, okay, this is definitely 2 related languages, and it's the same words but expressed with different accents.
It's funny because, in the skeptic circles, you learn a lot about the mistake that people make where they see patterns and coincidences where you determine too much meaning behind them, and it's funny to see that actually extended to things like, the meaning of words.
It's always a danger of inductive reasoning. That's the thing, that little, is it signal or is it noise? There are, oddly enough, even in the world of languages, there are the eccentric sort of conspiracy theorists, as it were. There's a language called Basque, which is just spoken in the Pyrenees between France and Spain, and it's one of the world's few language isolates. No one knows any other language that it's related to, and so people spend their time trying to find that candidate language, trying to find, the few little similarities which will, in their minds, prove that the Basques are in fact Japanese. I've seriously heard that mentioned, or Finnish, or related to other languages, but no one ever has been able to prove it in a way that academia, linguists generally accept.
I need to find a recording of that language.
It's a funny sounding language. It's rather beautiful in a way. They've got a great word in the Basque language, oxikara, which means the period when a storm is brewing, when a thunderstorm's coming. That's the oxikara, which is a beautiful sounding word. You'll be able to find it if you just look it up on YouTube. I'm sure you'll get some.
It's funny because you hear words like that coming from it. You can imagine all the different takes that people would have of where that came from. Because it does sound like it could be from India or Native America, or it does have that.
Oh yeah, there's a theory that it's Native Americans, that the Basques are Native Americans, or sometimes the Native Americans are Basques, depending on which oddball you ask.
Yeah, so obviously I can see how that would happen.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you have many little segments of the book that actually do directly relate to issues that a lot of skeptic people talk about all the time, like the meaning of the word hoax, and that's great.
Hoc est corpus. It all goes back to the Last Supper and Jesus saying, "This is my body, which is given for you and for many," and all that sort of stuff. That's in the Latin version of the Mass. That was which the priest would recite over communion. He'd recite "Hoc est corpus," which means this is "Hoc est corpus meum." This is my body in Latin. And then after the Reformation in England, when it was only the basically the foreign Roman Catholics and the English Protestants. Well, I mean, there were Roman Catholics in England, but that was the basic distinction. And it was making fun of the Roman Catholics that the Protestants came up with, a Protestant came up with this joke magical line, hocus pocus, which is just taking the mickey out of hoc est corpus. And that meant hocus then got shortened to hoax. And hocus pocus and hoax are the same thing. And actually hokum is the same thing as well. It's just another version of the hocus pocus and hoax line, which is related to bunkum, altered by connection to that. And bunkum has an even more beautiful story behind it.
And that's from a county that's about 45 miles north of me in North Carolina.
I've always wanted to go to Buncombe County, yeah, because there was a representative for Buncombe County in Congress who made a speech, this incredibly stupid speech, and he went on for ages and ages and ages in Congress. Everybody was trying to, people started booing and slow hand clapping and saying, for God's sake, shut up. And afterwards they asked him, why didn't you stop? Why did you make such an incredibly stupid speech? And he explained to his, colleagues, to the other representatives, that he wasn't making the speech for them at all. He just wanted to make it so it would be reported back in Buncombe County in the local newspaper. And so he was speaking for Buncombe, not for them. And this became such a notorious incident in Congress that any really stupid speech became known as Buncombe. And so Buncombe relates to hokum, and hokum goes back to hocus pocus. And it also goes to the lovely word to debunk a theory is to get rid of all the bunkum in it, rather than to kick it out of a bunk bed.
Your book even comes out to be where the word fossil came from.
No, fossil is a beautiful one. I mean, I love the fossil words like ruthless and reckless and gormless, but fossil means anything dug up. It's just from fodere, or fossus, the past participle of fodere in Latin, meaning to dig. But it's the fossil words that I really love, things like gormless. And you suddenly go, wait a minute, was there ever any gorm? And, reckless, are people ever wreckful? Of course, they used to be. There used to be people who were ruthful and gormful, and before people were feckless, they obviously had feck. And these words, which still exist only in their negative forms, have always rather fascinated me.
See, I could do this for another couple hours, because this book is just like this. And it's funny because I could keep going, and then we can get by the end of the book, nobody will have to buy it.
Yeah. I mean, I could go on forever, and that's part of my problem. But that's why I set it down in a book, and then just these connections that go on in every. And the amazing thing about writing the book was I could go on in any direction. For example, I mean, we're talking about Basque just now, and like the theory of where are they Native Americans? Which no, they weren't. But Arizona may well be named after a Basque word. It's one of the theories on the origin of the name, that it comes from the Basque Arizonac, meaning good oaks, good oak trees. But you see, these lines, these connections, these subterranean passages, which lead out all over the language, and that's what I loved, and that's why I had to write the book.
Then soon you're going to have another book that kind of is in this line, because another book that skeptics might be interested, because it kind of makes fun of horoscopes. Well,
horoscopes are from the hour of the day when you were born, the horo as in hour, and scope looking. So it's just looking at a scope. There is something I like, which is that astronomy and astrology were originally essentially the same word. They weren't distinguished in the way that we would distinguish between them until basically the sort of 16th, 17th century. And astrology just means the study of stars, technically speaking, and astronomy just means the measurement of stars. It's rather like the laws of stars. It's rather like economics could be ecology, and ecology are, well, pretty much the same word. But there are all these strange words which we get from astrology, things like disaster, which is a dis astra, which is when the stars are in the wrong place. or the influence of stars. So that was originally influence was just a technical astrological term for trying to find out on the basis of some very, 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 very distant balls of hydrogen, helium, what was going to happen to you tomorrow.
See, could do this all day. Great. So where is your blog?
My blog's is blog.inkyfool.com. As Inky Fool, spelled like covered in ink, INKYFOOL.
And then the book is found on bookstores that
all good bookstores and some evil ones, I should hope.
Some evil ones? There's the where are the evil bookstores?
I don't know, but I've always liked them when people say available in all good bookstores. I like to imagine the evil bookstore owner going, ha ha ha, we won't stock it.
Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you very much indeed for having me.
Thanks to everybody who contributed to this episode, especially our guests, and Bob, Eve, Heather, Jarrett, Wendy, and Bob Carroll. Especially considering we put this episode out on Christmas Day. So I hope everybody has a safe and fun time surrounded by friends, family, and people you love. And you can find links to everything you heard about in this episode in the show notes on our website, which is at www.skepticality.com. Oh, and I'm leaving you with a song by our own Heather Henderson. If you like this song, you can go to the show notes, and I have a link where you can buy this track to help out Heather and her musical endeavors. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, or whatever other Yuletime celebration you prefer.
Doesn't it seem like no time since we've seen it? Every time it comes around, there's less time in between it. Joy to the world can be heard throughout the land, and I've had all I can stand. I can't wait for Christmas to be over. My head hurts from the merriment and cheer. I can't wait for Christmas to be over. It shows up at the end of every year, with angel this and snowman that and reindeer that fly, and Hall and ancient Psycho in his sled through the sky. That's why I can't wait for Christmas to be over, 'cause I'm over it already. I'll count the days till Christmas is finished. That tree inside my house has got to go. The minute that Christmas is finished, I'm vacuuming this artificial snow. All the tinsel kitty cat insists on eating. Tomorrow she'll be very painfully excreting. I can't wait till Christmas is finished. I can't wait to be Christmas free. It used to be the pretty lights would twinkle and shine. Now it's a contest who can have the gaudiest shrine. And I'm not even cold, but there's the chill of my spine. The carolers are awful cheerful. You'll get an awful earful. I'm waiting for Christmas to go bye-bye, but then I'll have to pay all of these bills. As always, till Christmas goes bye-bye, I'm gonna be taking lots of pills. telling me that I should love my creepy neighbors despite their odd and reprehensible behaviors. I'm waiting for Christmas to go bye-bye. That won't be soon enough for me. I can't wait for Christmas to be over, and then I'll start to dread when it returns. It's so nice when Christmas is over, 'cause I've got more imperative concerns. The crying kids will make sure I feel cheap and rotten if there's a single lousy toy that I've forgotten. I'll take a nap till Christmas is over.